When Margaret Erle was 6 years old, her favorite toys were dolls. She combed their hair and bathed them, kissed their hard plastic foreheads, and rocked them to sleep. Margaret liked to imagine what her own grown-up life would be like one day, away from her New York City apartment. She imagined a spacious house with lots of rooms and even more trees, a big, strong husband, plenty of children, and a menagerie of animals. Whenever she had time to herself, she retreated to her soft pink room and sang lullabies to her dolls. She swaddled them, talked to them, washed and pressed their dresses. Soon enough, her desire for make-believe had faded. By the time she was 8, she had real babies to tend to. The outgoing Margaret was so trustworthy, parents in her neighborhood asked her to watch their children. Her mother, Gertrude, fretted that she was too young, but Margaret pointed out that she'd had plenty of experience taking care of her little brother Alan, who was 2 years younger. And by the time she was finishing 4th grade, Margaret had a busy after-school and weekend schedule, wrangling strollers up and down stairwells and wheeling babies around her block. She boiled bottles and knew instinctively how to hold infants' heads and change their diapers. The giant pins made her a little nervous at first. What if she poked a leg? But she got the hang of it quickly. She got a dime each time she babysat. After school, she helped Gertrude in the kitchen, peeling carrots and potatoes as soon as her hands were deft enough. She wasn't allowed to touch knives. She could hurt herself, hurt someone else, be reckless. Margaret was helpful and eager, but also careful. Gertrude, who showed little approval and even less affection, had rules, and one was expected to obey. Like most of her friends in Manhattan's Washington Heights in the 1950s, Margaret was the child of Jewish refugees from Nazi Europe. Her German-born parents never spoke of their past comfortable lives, of the tragedy they'd evaded. Now they waited for disaster in America, even as their kids plunged into its promise. Nobody was warier than Gertrude, who had wounds she both felt and wore. Deserted by her first husband, Gertrude was dealt an even crueler blow when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at 50. She felt that the surgeons who removed her breast also stripped her of her identity as a woman, leaving her with scars that stretched from her collarbone to the bottom of her rib cage, red ropes beneath her porcelain skin. A few months after the operation, Margaret came home unexpectedly and caught a glimpse of Gertrude as she dressed behind the bathroom door, opened to let steam escape. Gertrude, suddenly aware of her daughter's gaze, slammed the door shut with one hand as she tucked her bulky foam prosthesis into her bra with the other one. Silence was how the family coped with their pain. Nobody talked about the breast cancer that had also maimed Margaret's aunt and grandmother, and nobody ever mentioned the relatives the Nazis murdered, or for that matter, the war itself. In fact, any longing for the bourgeois world of music, food, art, and culture Gertrude and Joseph had left behind in Europe was also unspoken. While Margaret felt loved by her extended family, cousins, a grandmother, and aunts and uncles who had miraculously reassembled nearby, what the family had lost hung over her childhood like an invisible veil. Her parents spoke German to relatives and to each other when they were angry, but Margaret knew better than to ever ask questions about what they were discussing. She also didn't ask questions about the pretty blonde that Joseph met when he took her and Alan to a nearby park on weekends. Joseph always greeted the young woman, Irene, warmly. A few minutes later, Irene's mother would show up to push the children on the swings, while Joseph and Irene disappeared, they said, to go chat at a diner for an hour. Margaret somehow understood that coffee was a euphemism. When the two returned, they always seemed in high spirits.